Cool. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for skipping one of the keynote speakers to come listen to me. I'll try my best to make it as valuable as possible for you. So I'm Bevan. I'm going to be talking about the treacherous journey from developer to coach. The title's a bit more dramatic than it probably should be, but we'll get into that a bit later. So I am currently Agile Coach at Travel Start. We're a big online travel agency. And I put my contact details on the screen. I realize now that's quite small. I'll leave them up again at the end, so if you want to, please feel free to tweet. I know you can do that straight from the app. I'm really new to this, so I would appreciate any and all feedback. You can do that either via Twitter, you can do it via the app, you can do it to me in person. If you don't want to hurt my feelings, you're welcome to send an email as well. I'm very open to it, so I would appreciate that. So yeah, let's get started. So before I do, I just want to find a little bit who's in the room. So could you just put your hand up if you are in a company or department that has anything to do with software development? Student count, software development, that's fine. Okay, that can make it interesting for you because you haven't really experienced too much of the working world. Is anyone not in software? Okay, that makes it easier. Are there any Scrum Masters here? Hands up, yeah. Any software developers or student developers? Any managers? Here we go. Product managers, that's good, that counts as well. Cool, so thank you so much for coming. So it helps a lot that everyone's kind of got to do with something in software because that's pretty much what most of the talk's about, and that's my domain of expertise, that's where I've come from. So I wanted to ask, does this look familiar? For anyone that's worked. You've got some really happy boss on the one side, everyone's just kind of staring at their hands or their palms, you're in a meeting, and the boss is saying how great he is and how not great you are. Or we heard in the talks yesterday in John's talk where he said, you know, where do product ideas come from? And as well, the boss, there's the boss, look at him, he's stoked, he's got all these ideas, and the rest of us just kind of have to take it the whole time. Does anyone feel like this when they're not in a meeting as well? Sometimes you sit at your desk and you just, another one of those days, you know. So, I mean, we all kind of feel it. Everyone kind of nods, and we all get these days where we feel a little bit frustrated. And that's what I want to talk about, and that's kind of where the treachery comes from. So I want to delve a little bit into that. You really can't see that picture at all. There's a mountain in the background with a path. So from the dictionary definition of treachery, we have guilty of involving betrayal or no, that's not the one. Yeah, that may apply in some instances, but that's a different talk now for this one. We actually want to focus on the second one. So you'll see that of conditions presenting hidden or unpredictable dangers. That sounds very much like software. There's a lot of unpredictability. You don't know when your boss might come in and start screaming and saying, there's a bug on production, or we really need this feature right now that they don't then use for the next 6 months. We've all kind of heard something along the way. So that's where I brought the treachery into it. And it is a journey. Which means that I haven't reached my destination yet. I'm still on this journey. I'm still ongoing. So what I'd like to share with you today, the goal of this task, is to show you that with those frustrations that are caused by the traditional way of working, and it's quite prevalent in South Africa and actually in quite a lot of countries, with all that frustration, there are things that you can do. You don't need a massive agile transformation. You don't necessarily need to be the manager or the boss. It does help, but you don't need to. So there's something that you can do at each level that you are in to help you in this transition. And with your leadership, which is a role more, or it's an individual trait more than it is an actual job title, you can actually help create this agile transformation. So that was me. Still is to some extent. I started working around 2008, 2009. I graduated from university. I was very excited. We learned about Gantt charts. And I was so excited to apply my wonderful knowledge in the world of software development, which, as you know, doesn't really turn out that way. Not always. Sorry for students. I'm preparing you. This is what happens. You get all excited, and it is. In the beginning, it's very excited. But then you start learning more and more, and you get more and more frustrated. So very quickly, turn to that. So I'm going to talk a bit more about my frustration, and it began with Scrum. Initially, when we got introduced to Scrum, it was amazing. You know, we were at the end of a really big project when I joined Travel Start, and the manager at the time had obviously got off a plane at some point and read the cover of Scrum, Jeff Sutherland's book, doing twice the work in half the time. And I think that's pretty much where she stopped. So she came back and was like, we're doing Scrum now. And a few people went on training, and they came back and they said, we are now certified to do Scrum. Great. It meant we could get a little bit of planning. There was more collaboration, except none of that really happened. We did all these meetings. We got to our retrospective. And after the second or third retrospective of you saying, maybe we should fix some technical debt, or maybe we should try doing unit testing, or maybe we should try doing something else. And the manager overriding you saying, that's not how we do things around here. That's not what we do. So eventually everyone just kind of starts looking like that, and you fill in your what went well, what can we do better next time? Doesn't matter, it's not going to change anything. And that's where my frustration started. So I started reading into Agile, and I was like, wow, this sounds amazing. You know, you've got these companies that are doing these great things and innovating, and people are happy at work. And I wasn't, and I wanted that. We always learned about Google at the time. So back then, and well, pretty much still now, they've always been the engineer's place to want to work. You know, you hear about these mythical 20% time where they get to create new technologies and play around with interesting new languages, and it's just amazing. It sounded so great. And the more you learn about Agile, especially in the beginning, you learn about companies like Spotify, where they've got this whole new radical structure where they actually enjoy what they do and they're learning and iterating, and you're like, wow, that sounds like Agile. Then another one, you can't actually see it, but it says ING there. That's on the radical end of the scale. Has anyone heard of ING? So they're a bank in the Netherlands. Amazing story. They basically fired their entire company and made them reapply for their jobs with a new Agile structure. So they said, we're not going to keep anything that we have now we think is not working. We're going to start from scratch. So they didn't change people's roles. They didn't make them uncomfortable by putting them into something that they didn't want to do. They said, this is what we would like to achieve. What do you want? And let's interview you for that role. So that's what I was reading. But that was not what I was experiencing, and that's where the frustration comes in. And whenever you would show these examples to your bosses, you would say, wow, but look, Spotify is doing this. They're pretty cool. You'd hear stuff like, yeah, but they're a much bigger company. Yeah, we're a lot smaller than that. Then you'd hear, oh, we don't have their resources. Yeah, look, they're a multi-billion-dollar company. You know, we're not. Or my favorite, our people are not as smart as theirs, or not as hardworking as theirs. This is a true quote. I've heard this, actually said before. It was amazing. It was about my team, so I was a manager for a bit, and I heard that, and it hurt. So this is the frustration that we work with. There are people that actually think and speak this way. So what I've done is I thought for this talk, I'm going to keep it nice and short. I'm going to put in 4 traits of individual leadership. And I would like to be challenged on this, because for me, this worked for me. And I know it's not some thing that everyone can just go apply to their life, but I'd like people to at least discuss it and think about it. I am a computer nerd, so of course I'm going to put a gaming reference in. It's dangerous to go alone. Take this. So the first one we're taking is passion. Passion is a very loose term, but we'll get into that a little bit deeper. Persistence, resistance, or dealing with resistance, and then patience. I was going to do just 3 Ps because that had a more catchy phrase, but I realized that you cannot talk about resistance without persistence without resistance. So let's get started. Passion. This is our first tool in our arsenal. It's the first bit of equipment that we're going to take with us on our journey. If you go on a long trip or you're going on a journey, you need to put some equipment with you, and passion is our first one. But what is it? You know, what are we trying to, what is passion? Passion what? Is it like just I sing, or I scream, or I feel something? Yes, you feel something. It should be your compass. It should be what directs you. In the keynote this morning, Sonia spoke about that direction that you need. That's for a company, for an organization. At an individual level, the passion is what you feel for that purpose or that intent. It's, do I actually care about that? Does it make me excited? So mine was born out of pure frustration, but that's not everyone's journey. So what I would like to do, if you would humor me on this, is I'd like us to try something out. So I'm going to invite you to just do a quick little vision exercise. It's going to be a bit uncomfortable, but this is where the learning happens. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Like was said yesterday, I can watch you. We're all trusting adults. I can see where everyone is. I'd like you to close your eyes. Then I'd like you to think about what your future looks like. And not just any future, what your ideal future looks like. I want you to think very long term, 10, 20, 50 years time. Think about where you are. Think about what you're doing. What does your life look like? Do you have a partner? Do you have a house? Where is this house? And then let's move towards work. How amazing could this world of work look? And if you're getting to a nice place, how does this feel? You can open your eyes again. Did anyone feel warm or happy when they thought about this place? Yeah? So that feeling, that's passion. That what you saw in your vision, that what you've got there, that is what you're passionate about. So if you got that feeling, and even if you didn't, it is something that you can make yourself feel by just dreaming. Absolutely just going and thinking, what is the most ridiculously insane, amazing version or future version of myself that can exist? And do I feel happy when I see or think about that person? If the answer to that is yes, that's passion, and that's what you want to replicate. So what can you do? For one, and this is something I do, so I'm not giving advice that I don't do myself. Take 2 minutes to 15 minutes a day to just remember that feeling. Whether you wake up first thing in the morning and just close your eyes and think, cool, I'm starting my day off fresh. That's what it feels like. This is what I'm after. This is what I want to drive towards. If I do something today, does it make me feel that way or not? If it doesn't, then, well, don't really do that. And that's what this is. When you make a decision, does it make you feel good? Does it make you feel like you're heading in this direction of something that you're passionate about? If it's not, then that's your answer. The next step, once you've kind of started feeling this and seeing this in yourself, is share it with your team and share it to them over and over and over again. So if you read a management book or a leadership book or something along that, they'll normally tell you something along the line, like have a clear vision, go towards that and repeat that. That's what they all seem to say. But they don't really tell you how to do that. And the easy way is to just make it up. You can make up your own vision. My vision, if I can share that with you, is that every single person is empowered to be the best version of who they are, to create companies that make customers happy, to create products that make people really, really happy. And happiness is a broad term, but whatever their definition is, that's what we do. So that's important. So that's passion. Next up, we've got persistence, and that ties into our last action, over and over and over again. You've got to be persistent. This is Joel Barker. He writes a book called Paradigms. He's sometimes seen as a futurist. He talks a lot about vision. He's got a whole bunch of YouTube videos. Most of them are not free, so don't attempt to watch them. They're like 350 Rand for a video. It's weird. But he has a quote that I absolutely love. Is that vision without action is merely a dream. That's what we've just done. Action without vision is just passing the time. Just passes the time. And vision with action can change the world. Action is important. Vision's great, but you need to do something about it. Otherwise, you're just kind of living in this dream world, and that's not sustainable. So this is what persistence is. Right? Persistence is grit and determination, and that's persistence. I thought it was funny because he's got sand in his hand and he's eaten it. It's brilliant. So yeah, when I first joined team, so a nice little story for persistence, and something that's actually worked for me. I'm obviously looking back at my stories with complete hindsight vision. I don't know if anyone was in Zane's talk yesterday with the biases. That's what I'm doing. It's a lot easier to see these things looking back, but that's why I wanted to share it. Was when I first joined TravelStart, I came from a much smaller company. When I joined, I remember seeing like 6,000 plus unit tests, and I was amazed. I was like, whoa, people have unit tested their system. I looked into it, and about 2,000 of them were failing. So yeah, not very useful, because now the bull test job was just being ignored by everyone. So what I did as an individual, and any developer can do this, is aim to fix one unit test every time you work on a feature. So every time you start a feature, you spend 20 minutes to fix a unit test. What ended up happening is within a month, I'd fixed 1,800 odd of them, because most of them were the exact same problem why they were failing. So I just copied and pasted everything. So it sounds more impressive than it actually was. But just from being able to persist that, be able to keep doing that on a day-to-day basis, people take notice. People don't take notice when you do work. They take notice when you do work that results in a difference. And that difference can be small, but every small step grows and snowballs and eventually becomes something that people take real notice of. So when the more senior developers, people that had been there for 5, 6 years already, noticed that the unit tests had dropped down to less than 200, they got involved. And within another 2 weeks after that, we resolved all those failing unit tests, just from a small little step. And there's this Reddit quote that I found that is absolutely amazing. Does anyone go on Reddit here? Yeah? You should follow Just Shower Thoughts. It's amazing. You get some smart ideas there. So when people talk about traveling to the past, they worry about radically changing the present by doing something small. You've all seen that in a movie. You know, Back to the Future, I can't do something small because it's going to change everything. But barely anyone in the present really thinks that they can radically change the future by doing something small now. It's weird, right? How that works. That's why, dude, that works so well, dude. So that's kind of what the persistence is. Persistence is not just banging your head against the wall, trying to do these big, massive transformations and then irritating everyone. And like Sonia again said this morning, like, you know, people have these concerns that you're going to try to change them and they're going, not for me. They're going to push back. Small changes, small changes. So what can you do? Use small, safe-to-fail experiments. I actually changed the wording of the slide to copy what every other person has said because it's worth repeating. Small, safe-to-fail experiments. If you don't know what safe-to-fail is, think about it. Say, I think Sonia and Joe in their workshop yesterday said, what might you be able to do? And if you can't do it, what else could you do? What could you do to make it safe? And what does failure mean in this instance or this example? So symptoms of the persistence, because I talk a lot, not in front of people, 2 people normally. So this is still new for me. But part of my persistence of my role evolution, I think it's apt to kind of share a little bit of what that was. So I started off as a software developer. I was a software developer for many years. And I persistently spoke about Agile since I discovered it and learned about it and thought how amazing it was. I kept talking about it, saying, we need to do this, and why don't we try this? Let's experiment with that. The moment we got a new development manager, the first thing that happened was, when looking for a Scrum Master, they were like, well, Bevan's the guy that keeps talking about this, let him be Scrum Master. So I did it. Over the next few months, we got another few changes in the company, and I started speaking about my limited authority and how much I wanted to get into management. So that's what I started speaking about. I was persistent. I said, well, look, if I want to create this environment, I can't be a developer, I can't be a Scrum Master, I have to be more, I have to be a manager. That's where the power lies, right? I want to be able to change things. And I spoke about that over and over and over again. And speaking about things is a very safe-to-fail experiment, because you can say things and most people don't actually listen, but it's only when you say it over and over again, and again, when people see action happening from it, then they remember it. Eventually, they're looking for a new manager for a new team. And the first thing that came to mind was, hey, wait a minute, Bevan was saying that he wanted to be a manager. Let's chat to him. And this is something that I think I mentioned in my learning objectives initially on the talk, was a lot of developers feel that you can go from, you know, junior, media, senior, staff, architect, and then where? A lot of developers get pushed into management that don't actually care about managing people. I did a little survey on ZA Tech. Is anyone here on ZA Tech? There we go. I don't know if you saw my question. Did you respond? Legend. Thank you. So I've been like bugging the ZA Tech community, trying to like find out more, because I'm out of development now for a few years, just to get some more context. And it's amazing. Of all the people that wanted better management, most people didn't actually want to be a manager. So So it's interesting, again, is that if you want to get that, if you want to grow into that position, you need to tell people, because a lot of people don't know, and they will just guess. They'll be like, you're a great developer, you must be a great manager. Doesn't work. Doesn't work that way. I was a terrible manager for the first few months, but I had to learn to be a manager, not a really strong developer trying to, show other people how to do it better. It doesn't work that way. And that's persistence. That's what you want to get towards. You want to try something. Again, that's related to the experiments. And always repeat. Repeat yourself, always. That's persistence. Right. The one problem with persistence, though, and this is why my fancy 3Ps thing didn't work out, is because sometimes you can persist in the wrong direction over and over again. Sometimes persisting too much is the wrong thing. I found this little GIF, which I love. You all know the Roombas? It's trying so hard. It's not going to go anywhere. It's wonderful. Love it. So that right there happens all the time with persistence. Right? You can keep talking about how much better you want to make your company and how much you want to grow in your role and how much you want to fix unit tests, but you're going to hit resistance always. So resistance is just people trying to stop what you're doing. And it's not something that they always do on purpose, but it's resistance. That's you trying to fight your way through the mud, and there are people in your way trying to stop you. All you want to do is go and score that try. And a good story on this, exactly, I learned this the hard way. A few years ago, the team I was managing was a bunch of app developers, and they also kind of rushed through to get an app up. And they had very little unit tests. I'm a big fan of unit tests. So they were struggling with a bit of quality issues and shared understanding. It was partly because product owners sitting in Cape Town and they're sitting in Taiwan. And I thought, what's a good way of building shared understanding, which has worked for me, is test-driven development. Great. I'll just teach them about test-driven development. And so I taught them. I showed them stories. I showed them how it worked. I gave them demonstrations. We did practice things. And I thought, cool. They were all happy. They said, this looks great. And they went off and they did none of it. Yeah. Does that sound familiar to anyone that's in a bit of a leadership role? Yeah. Or at least try to get your team to do stuff. Like, we just need to use, spaces, not tabs. It just doesn't work. So what did I do? I tried again. I thought, you know what, maybe it was me. Let me persist. What else can I try? Maybe I need to share better articles or videos or some other training tip. And I did that, and still nothing. And I couldn't figure it out. They were completely resisting. So I gave up. A few years ago, I gave up. Then a mentor and coach, Antoinette, told me about Peter Block. And he's got this book called Flawless Consulting. And within that, it's a bit paraphrased, but the quote that comes out really nicely from that is, resistance is an unskillful expression of a valid concern. Such a good quote. This has been probably one of the quotes that have changed my life the most, inside and outside of work. So let's break it down a little bit. Resistance. What is resistance? Right? So that's any form of resistive behavior. That's for you or someone else. That's someone verbally saying no. People just not doing what they need to. If you think about yourself, procrastinating. I do that all the time. Procrastinate. That's resistance behavior. I'm resisting doing something. Unskillful expression. I don't know what it is. So I'm creating this behavior that doesn't correlate to what I'm saying, perhaps, or what I mean to. And a valid concern is where we'll sit on. Can anyone think of valid concerns why someone would not want to do something?
Might not believe that will result in what you're aiming for.
Yeah, might not.
Verbalize it.
Yeah, they don't believe it, so they don't do anything. Yeah. Anyone else?
Maybe the skill set doesn't exist. The person doesn't possess the necessary skill set for that.
Correct. Yeah, they don't have the skills for that. What else is there? Fear. That's a great one. Maybe they're just afraid. So if you've got something that you've been trying to like get people to do, and they're not doing it, and no matter what you say or do or share or try with them, take a step back and think, what is the valid concern that they have? Are they afraid that maybe they will be made to look like a fool? Do they not have the skills, and they again don't want to show up on that? There's always some reason. And putting yourself into that whole thing of empathy, that whole mindset of, you know what, I want to get this done so much that I'm actually going to forget about myself for just a second and care about you. And you'll see that kind of fits in with that whole theme. I think the conference organizers did a good job trying to fit that all in together. Is that, are you thinking about what someone else who's resisting your great ideas, are you thinking about their valid concern? So what can we do about this? What is there something that we can really think about and say, what can we do? If someone's giving you resistive behavior, what can you do? You can ask a question. So there's a whole field of coaching around resistive behavior. I won't be able to teach you everything at all, not because I don't know everything on that. But even a short talk like this might be a bit too short. But an example would just be to, if someone says, if you're saying, cool, like with test-driven development, so the example that I used with them was to go and sit with them and said, well, what is your concern? Like, why aren't we doing test-driven development? And you persist with the questions. You see, I tie that in. Eventually it came out that they were concerned about the fact that it would make their tasks take longer. And as an organization, for at least within that department, one of the KPIs was tied to that. So they were worried about the fact that their KPI would be affected if they now suddenly had to spend more time upfront planning and doing test-driven development before building the feature. And I thought, oh man, wait, I failed. I have failed. The organization that I want to build and work in doesn't have that kind of mentality. So then you can go along and say, well, let's address that concern. Forget about the quality, forget about that. Let's address that concern, because if you can remove those concerns, stuff can flow. So in that example, if you're interested, we changed our KPIs from anything to do with velocity, which we knew was an anti-pattern, towards cycle time, flow times. So depending on what we have and the numbers that we set for this KPI, the numbers we set for those KPIs was based on you including testing, unit testing inside of that. And it actually all snowballs down to, again, the unit tests, those 2,000 unit tests that were failing, is that people were just concerned about the fact that they needed to get work done. So they couldn't slow down to write unit tests, which caused quality issues, which meant that they had to work harder to increase the features and then created more bugs, and it just spiraled out of control. So a small concern that isn't always clearly expressed can be clarified with a question. Sometimes more than one, sometimes quite a few. But once you know what that concern is, you can test it. Create a shared understanding. So a simple way of creating shared understanding is to just have someone repeat back what you've just said. If you explain a concept to someone, ask them and say, well, what did you understand from that? What did you get from that? Sometimes the best intentions can still have misunderstandings. I've actually heard that quite a lot before. With coaching these days as well, you work with a lot of people that are trying to become better managers. And they said, yeah, but I told them this. I told them to do that. And I said, well, if they haven't done it, like, did you ask them what they understood from that? And they understood something entirely different. And again, creating shared understanding is one way of breaking resistance. Finally, you've got to support their journey. Trying to ask questions to clarify just so that you can build your own understanding is a bit one-sided. When you ask those questions to clarify, you need to do it on their behalf. You need to really want to understand them. And yes, there's the overarching theme of, you know, this is for my journey, this is for my vision, and I'm passionate about resolving this. But when you're asking questions on resistive behavior, you want to hear from their side. You really want to be open to hearing what they have to say. And that's it. So I've left patience for last. Patience is one of the only virtues of the four of these things. It's the 7 virtues action. And I thought it was quite apt because patience is the virtue against anger. So if you have anger, you want patience to resolve against that. And I thought this picture was quite good as well. Is anyone a gardener here? No, me neither. My wife is. Ah, there you go. My wife's a gardener. She can spend hours digging in the dirt, waiting for a little thing to grow. And every time I go home, every day, she's like, look, this one grew. That's patience. And the definition for it is it's the ability to endure difficult circumstances, such as perseverance in the face of delay. When things aren't going to your speed, and you're frustrated, and that's patience. So now it's very easy for me to stand up here and say that. Be patient. You came here for a talk talking about frustrations, and I'm telling you to be patient. So again, I'm going to tell a story. When I first started managing that team, because I was a developer, I had these expectations of, I want to achieve great things as a manager. And with this team, we are going to achieve great things. So one of the first things that I had to do when I went to this team was we had to pretty much rewrite our app. And it was a whole team effort, and I thought I'd given a clear understanding of what the purpose was and the drive was. But I found myself, sometimes with the large workload that we had and the delays, I found myself jumping in to do the code myself. I don't know if, as a developer, you've heard a manager or a senior say that to you, where you go, it's fine, I'll just do it. And if you're a senior that's ever done that before, or you've heard it within your teams, no, I'll just do it for you. Don't update you, I'll do it for you. And that's impatience. I realized, I was like, had I become that guy? Was that me? The answer was yes, it was me. I was the guy causing that look on everyone in the team, going, I know better, I'm going to do it. I've been with the company for longer, I know exactly where to do this and fix this. Did that fulfill my vision, my passion? No, it didn't. And I found that out a couple of days later in my reflection. I looked back and I thought, well, a minute, this doesn't feel right. I'm not feeling that happy, fuzzy feeling. People aren't smiling at work anymore. What am I doing? It's always me. What am I doing? And I looked back at the team and I looked back at my interactions with them and I realized, well, look, we are trying to hit a deadline. But if we hit this deadline, there's just going to be another one next time. That's part of innovation. That's part of a growing company. There's always some new goal to try and hit. When do you stop the cycle? So at the risk of, the team maybe not looking that great, we had a discussion with them. I said, look, I'm jumping in too much here. I'm trying to do development. I'm trying to be a manager. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm lost. I want you to learn how to do this. Because in my world, my view, my vision of work, the team is completely self-managed. And I am just there to remove whatever's stopping you from being that autonomous way. I give you direction. I've given you direction, I've given you constraints. What's the other one from the talk this morning? But that's what I wanted. So I waited, and I waited, so I'll go back. I waited for that. That's what I had to do. The only way for me to actually get what I wanted from my passion, what I was passionate about, was to actually sit back and wait. And it wasn't easy. Still not easy. I still struggle with impatience. So I had to learn some things about it. And the one thing I learned about it was that people learn and understand in different ways and at different speeds. So we've gone through a bit of resistance behavior. We're already starting to think a little bit empathetically for others as well. So it's our journey, it's our skill to master. We're thinking empathetically for others. We need to understand that people learn different ways. There's a reason why in Scrum, the Scrum Master needs to be a facilitator. And a good facilitator knows how to hit all of those tactics, all of those listening skills. They've identified 7. I didn't actually count them, but I've identified 7 of them. So for me, while I was waiting, I didn't have to sit back and do nothing. I could learn. I could learn a different skill that could help me better manage my impatience. And that was understanding how different people learn. This way, I could teach people something and immediately go, you've either got it or you don't. And if you don't have it, then I have failed. And I can go back and learn something new to come back and teach you that. So what can you do? First is to reflect back. This is something I learned way too late in life. We always think that we have to go faster, and we have to go and we have to do everything right now, you know, and like the world's getting faster, and everything requires us to give these instant gratification bursts. Sometimes you have to stop and step back and reflect. This entire talk came from a reflection. I sat back one day and I looked at where I'd come. I was in a bit of a down patch, to be honest with you. I thought, what have I actually done? And I went through a bunch of achievements in my head. I thought, actually, you know what, I have done a lot. And a lot of the things that I was frustrated about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I'm not frustrated about anymore. I'm still frustrated now. Don't get me wrong, it doesn't go away. They just change, they're different ones. But now I know a little bit better how to deal with them. So they become frustrations, which become goals for me. And I go, okay, I'm frustrated about that now. Let's fix it. I'm excited about it. Frustration is just an opportunity for learning. It's amazing. Remember that everyone learns in different ways, so try something new. If you've been giving the same speech or the same training for the last X number of months or years, try something different. Take a ball, throw it around in class, draw a picture, get everyone else to draw pictures, something new. And probably the most important point of patience is you don't need to go fast, you just need to go. Tying back to the small steps, you don't need to do something massive or, you know, mind blasting and you don't need to go and fire the whole company and rehire them. You know, you can just do small steps. So what does my journey look like now? What is that? Well done, Bevan, you've told us all these great problems and frustrations, but how does that look now? Well, I can tell you that those unit tests that were failing are now completely integrated as part of our build and commit process. As part of every single pull request that a developer submits, tests need to be there. They need to be defined in the stories before they actually even get worked on. It becomes part of our definition of done and our definition of ready. It's something that no one even thinks about anymore. It just happens. It's part of, it's a habit now. You know, persistence builds habits. With regards to the managerial role, at one point I got to the team because I used to travel there for a bit, and I was there for 8 weeks. In the last 2 weeks, I didn't have anything to do. I had 4 weeks where I spent, you know, doing a little bit of training, doing some one-on-ones, doing some catch-ups, doing some admin for the office, and then I had nothing to do. And that's a weird feeling. To not have anything to do because you've given all the work to the team, and it wasn't just because I was lazy. That was only partly part of it. But that's the thing, the team had embraced self-management. They'd embraced the agile way of working where they were actually agile. They could change and swap and everything they wanted to do and choose how they wanted to work. And whenever they needed something, they could just tap on my shoulder and say, Bevan, we need this, we need snacks. Awesome, I'll go to the shop, yay. And that's it. It's not something that I believe I've done that special. Everything I've ever done, I've copied from the internet or other people. I learned that from software development, where you just go and Stack Overflow. You just learn everything from there. But it's worked. And the things that worked for me have been the 4 traits. It's been the passion for leading me into the future, leading us into the future. I'm passionate about where I want to go. And I will do whatever's necessary to get there. And that's where the persistence comes in. Grit, determination, small steps. I used to want to do big things. I stopped doing that. Small steps. Even my software development changed entirely in the last few years of me doing that, where it became small steps. I would make sure I could commit every few minutes. Has anyone here heard of practical refactoring? If you're a software engineer, Google it. If you're a product engineer, a product manager, Google it. Ask your teams to try it out. The whole purpose of it is to take one class of code and clean it up. So you start off at the top and you start removing duplicate imports. You start removing unnecessary comments like assign Boolean to true. That's not beneficial. Clean up the code, remove duplicate code, remove unnecessary complexity. You don't change the functionality of it. It's practical, it's pragmatic. And the overarching theme of that is that every 2 minutes you should be able to commit. If your boss comes in and says production is down, fix something, within 2 minutes you need to be able to commit that code. That's persistence and small steps. It's useful. Then there's resistance. You need to be able to use empathy. And one of the nice side effects of using empathy and understanding for other people is that when people realize that you actually care for them, they want to go with you. They realize, actually, maybe the place that you're trying to go is not as scary if I know that when I am scared, you will chat to me about it. And you will help me through that. And you will deviate just a little bit from the path that you're currently on. Finally, with patience, you need to reflect on your progress. I cannot teach anyone how to be patient. That's weird for me. But what I can teach you is to reflect back on what you've done over the last few weeks, months, years. And you'll realize that the small things that you've done are the ones that made a big difference eventually. And the more you look back and the more you start seeing those achievements that you've hit, the more you become more patient and realize, this is not working out right now. But I know in 6 weeks' time, I'm going to look back and I would have achieved this. Or in 3 months' time, I'm going to look back and it's going to have been achieved. Thank you. It's a lot shorter than I thought it would be, but thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone feel that they can't go tomorrow and try something small? Yeah? Does anyone want to? Oh, yeah.
Do you think coaches need coaching?
100% yes. Yeah.
How do you coach?
So, as a coach, I am alone in my organization. It is a very daunting and scary prospect. I've got a lot of work to do. But there are communities like Agile Africa where you get to meet other coaches and Scrum Masters and people on the same journey. A few months back, about 6 months ago, I went on a coaching course. Highly recommend it. It's not my company, so it's not technically advertising, but it's the IC Agile coaching Agile teams. And part of the training that Just Plain Agile, the company that does it, is that they do a monthly follow-up where you get to interact with the coaches that you were on the class with. So you build the safety between the coaching team at the conference or at the course itself. And every month you have a follow-up. Sometimes you can just email each other. Just say, hey, do you have an hour for a chat? So you practice your coaching by coaching others. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Anyone else? Cool. That's all from me then. Thank you so much. Cool.